Amen. We'll be down here in Layton, so we're surrounding the Mormons this week. 3 masses, 3 places, that's good. Surround the Mormons. And here in Salt Lake City. And today the feast of St. Patrick. Did a few considerations. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. St. Patrick was born in England. And of course, you know, since the Irish hate the English, they'll always tell you that he was not born in England. They say he was born in China, he was born in the ocean, he was born in France, he was born anywhere but not England, because the Irish hate the English. However, Patrick was born in England in the 280 AD, or 380 AD, and you know, so and that he was baptized Catholic. Then he became a slave and was brought to Ireland as a slave. Many years he was there as a slave. He saw the Irish people; they were very pagan, and you know, there were pagan kings running all over Ireland and main kingdoms, and they were kind of a nomadic people. They didn't have any cities. These kings went around ruling, and whoever had the biggest sword and who was the meanest guy became the king. So if you were a really mean guy and you were really good with the sword, you became king. And they ruled, and they were kind of barbarian and very violent, and didn't really establish any kind of order or cities. They just went around as nomads on the island of Ireland. St. Patrick, after a while, was released from slavery. Eventually, he was ordained a priest in France, and was sent, as he was already older by the time he even spent some years in a monastery, and he was either in his 40s or 60s when he actually began his ministry. He would be either, according to some accounts, he was 62 years old when he first began his public ministry, or he was in his late 40s, almost 50 years old, when he began his public ministry. So he didn't begin young like many others, though he was a Catholic all his life, and he went to Ireland. He went to bring Christ to Ireland and to drive the devil out of Ireland. There were a few small Catholic communities in Ireland, but the Irish were very violent, and the Irish were very wild, and they believed only in the power of the sword, and they also worshipped very much the devil. They had the Druids and false worships, and they believed in all kinds of false worships. And St. Patrick came, and he was determined to drive the devil out of Ireland. And one of the first miracles that he did was to drive the snakes out of Ireland, because in Ireland there were many, many snakes, and people were killed by the snakes, and he showed his great power by driving the snakes out of Ireland. Then he would go and speak with the local kings and try to speak them of Christ. And he would perform many, many miracles, raising people from the dead and doing other miracles. And one time he went to speak to a king about Christ, and he was a bishop, so he had his crozier, and he walked with his crozier, and he took his crozier, and he leaned on his crozier, and he put it on the foot of the king, and it cut a hole in his foot. But St. Patrick didn't realize that. And he was leaning on it, talking to him about the whole story of Christ. And the king thought, well, this must be part of the catechism class. The bishop's he's cutting a hole in my foot to see if I really can accept a Christ of suffering, and this is just part of the class. So he did not complain. He didn't show any pain, and he said, yes, good point, very good point, good point, good point. Yeah, I agree. And he listened to the whole class. Finally, after a very long time, several hours, St. Patrick realized, oh, my staff is cutting a hole in your foot. Why didn't you say anything? Well, I thought that was part of the class. And so St. Patrick said, well, you were ready to be baptized. And then he cured his foot, the hole that he put in it. And then the king became a Catholic. And then he went around preaching the Holy Gospel and performing many miracles. One time he said a mass and on Easter. You know, the Easter Vigil Mass, Holy Saturday night. When you sing the Holy Saturday Vigil, you light the fire. And the Druids knew that Holy Saturday was coming up, and there was going to be a lighting of a fire. And therefore they said to the Druid king, says, the gods have spoken, and that if any man lights a fire in the next 2 weeks, they must be put to death. And so therefore let the command be done throughout the entire kingdom, the little arid region in Ireland, that no one will light any fires, or they shall be put to death. St. Patrick came, and he had the Paschal fire. And at nighttime he lit the fire. And he was a big, tough guy. He didn't light a little bitty fire that soldiers can. When I was a kid, and we did the Paschal fire, Father Hannafin, our old Irish priest, goes, oh, we don't want to clean up a big mess. So we had a Folgers Crystals coffee can. And we lit the fire in the Folgers Crystals can, and Father Hannafin blessed the fire. Then we carried it into the church, because it's better than carrying the piece of the fire, just carry the whole fire to the church. And then we light the candle, because we had all kinds of wind problems, wind always blowing out the Paschal candle. So if you could bring the whole fire into the church, you don't have to worry about it. So we carried the fire into the church. And so, but St. Patrick, he lit a huge fire. And the king came to send soldiers to kill Patrick. But Patrick didn't even know. He had no idea that soldiers were coming to kill him. He was saying Mass. He was reading the prayers of Mass. And he didn't notice the soldiers running next to him. And they tried to get next to him. They tried to cut him during the Mass. But they couldn't reach him. They got a few feet away, but they couldn't get any closer. And they were screaming, but no one could hear their screams. People could see them screaming. They could see them trying to attack St. Patrick, but he was saying Mass. He didn't even know they were there. He preached, he lit the fire, he said the Paschal service, he read the 12 lessons, he sang the Mass in the middle of the night, he gave out the Holy Communion, he preached the gospel. He noticed the people weren't totally paying attention, but he didn't notice them. And then they converted. And he had many, many miracles, bringing souls back to Christ. He built churches and monasteries because he had spent some time as a monk. And the churches he built became the cities of Ireland. So the Irish towns that exist today, there were no towns before St. Patrick. He built 66 churches. And he may have been 62 years old, that's called retirement age by people nowadays, or he was only 50, also a little bit older to beginning your work. He was 62 years old when he began his first work. He built 66 churches. And he set up little villages. And he said, but people just stay around this village, and he put monks to pray. And there became monasteries all over Ireland. So Ireland is such a Catholic island, because there were no cities before Patrick built them. There was no organized structured society. They were just nomads wandering around. And he built the city, the villages. He said, here's a monastery, here are monks. He consecrated bishops and he ordained priests. And he established the whole of the island as Catholic. And he said also, these angry people, that anger would go out of their hearts. And they will be known as a joyful people, which is the way we see the Irish to this day. And they will be given the gift of music. That they would sing, and they would love to sing. And Irish music is still all over the world to this very day. The Irish songs. And then he said, Ireland will be specially blessed by God. And I used to still say Mass in Ireland sometimes, but I mention each time, almost every time that I'm there, about one of the miracles of St. Patrick, or prophecies of St. Patrick. But St. Patrick said, the Irish, they shall send scholars and saints throughout the world. And they have. Irish saints have gone everywhere in the world, bringing Christ to souls. In America, for instance, there are about 50 million Irish. There are 5 million in Ireland, 50 million here. There are more Irish outside of Ireland, by far, than there are in Ireland. They went all throughout the world. And he said, because God does not want the Irish to experience great agony and pain during the worst time in the history of the world, which will be the time of the Antichrist, Ireland will sink into the sea 7 years before the end of the world. And that will sink into the sea 7 years before the end of the world, so the Irish will not experience the reign of the Antichrist or the horrors of the time of the Antichrist. So every time we go to Ireland, I always say, we know that we have at least 7 years and 1 day before the end of the world, because Ireland is still here. And so St. Patrick got a great brought the faith to Ireland. There were already a few Catholics there before, but Ireland never became Catholic. He brought the faith to it, and it kept that faith. Even during the last 500 years, there was a great persecution of the Catholic faith in Ireland. The English tried to eradicate it, tried to destroy the Catholic faith. And though they put countless priests to death, and they made the faith illegal, the Irish kept their faith. They used to go and say Mass at what they call Mass rocks. And the priests were dressed in disguise and would live in a village for 10, 20, 30 years. And the English would try to find out which one was the priest, and they could never find out. That's why Irish are really good. It was called the Blarney. If you talk to a real Irishman, you can talk to him for 3 hours and have a most wonderful conversation. And at the end of it, you will discover you learned nothing. And he told you nothing. And you can ask him all kinds of questions. He will answer every single one of them. And when the answer is finished, you won't know the answer. But you'll be very happy. They learned the blarney. They learned how to speak and talk and be nice and tell you absolutely, positively nothing and answer every one of your questions. Because this is how they defended the priests and the Catholic faith during the time of persecution. And the English couldn't stop them. They couldn't catch them. They couldn't get their masses. They would go out and say mass in the secret at the Irish at the Mass Rock, and someone would watch for the British to come. And when they would see them coming, they'd warn the priest, and they had escape plan routes. There aren't very many trees in Ireland. All the little hills, it's easy to be seen there, but they knew how to escape in their hills and escape in their fields, and they kept their faith all these years. And then the great tragedy of Ireland today. A few years ago, Ireland became the first country on earth to vote for abortion by popular vote. Every single other country, including the United States, abortion was made a law by the government, by the judges. The only country on earth in which abortion was voted for as legal by popular vote was Ireland about 6 or 7 years ago. And the Irish people overwhelmingly voted that abortion should be legal in Ireland. One of the last countries to make abortion legal, but they did it by popular vote, and they won. The Irish are now trying to turn back to paganism. They're trying to bring Druid paganism back into Ireland. The seminaries, gone, empty. The souls, the churches, empty. There aren't that many beautiful churches in Ireland because the British persecuted Irish, and they put them to death for having their faith and didn't allow them to build big churches. So there are beautiful churches in Ireland, but they were only built in the last 150 years as the persecution began to diminish. But the Irish kept the faith strong, and the only thing that destroyed the faith in Ireland was Vatican II. They loved the church, and they loved the Pope. And once the Pope said it's okay to live in sin, the Irish said, fine, we'll do that. And once the Pope brought in the new Mass and the modernism, he destroyed Ireland. 2 countries were destroyed by Vatican II in a very big way. Countries that kept the faith so strong. Ireland on the far east side of Europe, and Poland on the west side of Europe, and Poland on the far east. Vatican II and the errors and heresies of the council destroyed those countries. Those people kept the faith, both of them under persecution for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then Vatican II came and destroyed it. Remember, persecution doesn't destroy our faith, it makes us strong. Persecution helps us. But if we turn away from doctrine, and we turn away from the teaching of the church, then there's great trouble on the horizon. And St. Patrick brought the faith to Ireland. And there are still some faithful Catholics in Ireland, but they are very few. And they are trying to destroy the faith in Ireland. It will never be completely destroyed. There's a movement bringing back the faith. We have a little resistance movement in Ireland. We have Catholics there that are coming back to the true practice of the faith. And there's a small coming back to the faith. But the faith is the only thing that makes Ireland great. It is that which made Ireland great. It is that which drove the snakes out of Ireland. Someone told me last year, I don't know if it's true or not, but then when they voted for abortion, that the snakes came back to Ireland. So I don't know if they did or didn't, but they said the snakes came back after the voting for abortion, after being gone for 1,200 years. And so, or 1,000, more than that, 1,500 years. But in any case, we'll go ahead and close it at that, and remember to keep the faith, and St. Patrick's a great apostle of the faith. And remember when he taught his catechism, his famous catechism class, he was once speaking to an Irish king who couldn't understand. They thought the faith was insane, because how can you say there are 3 persons in one God? How can you say there's 3 persons in one God? It's either 3 gods or 1 God, but you can't have 3 persons, 1 God. And St. Patrick picked up a clover, Irish clover. And he said, you see this clover? Well, as I see it, it has 3 leaves, but it's only 1 clover. So if there can be a 3-leaf clover, why can't there be a 3-person, 1 God? And the king became Catholic and his people with him. And the 3-leaf clover became the symbol of Ireland because of the prophecy and preaching of the true faith of St. Patrick. We have mostly 4-leaf clovers here in the United States, but they have 3-leaf clovers there, and the 3-leaf clovers are sign of the used as the teaching of the Blessed Trinity. So have the faith of St. Patrick, and we can keep the faith. Also, in the United States, when it's March 17th, if March 17th falls on Friday, you're allowed to eat meat because it's St. Patrick's Day. Patrick's Day is a holy day of obligation. In Ireland, it's a holy day in Ireland, it's not a holy day in the Universal Church. It's the only country in which their patron saint gets a holy day of obligation. St. Boniface is a patron of Germany, but it's not a holy day of obligation, it's St. Boniface. But the Irish say, you don't go to Mass on St. Patrick's Day, you commit a martial sin. You have to go to church on St. Patrick's Day, on Paddy's Day, because he's the great saint of Ireland. The church allowed the St. Patrick's to be a holy day of obligation, only in the country of Ireland. When the Irish came to America, they said, we're going to eat meat if it's St. Paddy's Day, and so therefore the bishops gave a dispensation that on St. Patrick's Day, the United States of America, that you can eat meat for St. Patrick's Day. Not for other saints, but for St. Patrick you can. There's a great love of St. Patrick throughout the world, and that the great bishop, who in his old age began his work, and who worked very much. He died when he was about 85 years old. He was in his 80s when he died. He only worked for about 20 years or 30 years at the most. And in those 20 years, he converted a whole country, walked the entire island, performed countless miracles, and preached the faith in such a way that the Irish would keep it until the end of the world, and gave them the great gifts that are known to the Irish people. Their cities, their towns, their whole life comes from him. And so we thank God for St. Irish, for St. Patrick, who made Ireland, the Ireland, the saints and scholars. Those are God bless you all. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.